Okay, we've heard the Chief Economic Advisor. Let's widen the debate on the economy roundtable. Nilesh Shah, MD Kotak Mahindra Asset Management and a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council with us. Professor Arun Kumar, economist and someone who's been a critic of the government. Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist, CARE Ratings, and Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor, Business Today TV. All of them joining us. Thank you all very much. Happy Diwali once again to all of you too and your families. Saal Mubarak. Let me turn to you, Professor Arun Kumar. You might have heard the Chief Economic Advisor saying, look, I'm sticking to the fact that we are in a V-shaped economic recovery. The data is showing that. So skeptics like you, according to him, have been proven wrong. You've got selection bias. You're being governed, presumably, more by politics than economics. How do you respond?
You know, the economy consists of very diverse set of, entities. So we have the unorganized sector. The data for which is not coming in. We assume that the unorganized sector is growing at the same rate as the organized sector, which was true before demonetization, but not after that, and especially not, because of the COVID, where the unorganized sector got hit very hard. So the recovery, that has taken place after April, May last year has been a gradual recovery. Now, if you look at quarter by quarter data, you say it's V-shaped. But if you look at month by month recovery, it's a shallow recovery. Okay. Then we again had a dip now again, and then from that dip we are recovering again, and this time the recovery is stronger than what it was last year. So certainly the things are looking better at this point than last year. But the unorganized sector is not doing well at all. If your economy is going to grow at 9% and your organized sector is going to go at about 14-15%, then the unorganized sector is declining at about 8%.
But Professor Kumar, sorry to interrupt. This is exactly what I asked the Chief Economic Advisor, and he said all five fingers are not the same. You cannot expect every sector of the economy to grow consistently at the same rate.
I agree. But the point is the unorganized sector is declining, and we are measuring the unorganized sector by assuming that it's growing at the same rate as the organized sector. So the assumption is incorrect. The second is the method by which the GDP is calculated is by projecting from the previous year. Now, the previous year's projection will not matter when there's a shock to the economy, and therefore it will overestimate the growth. So we had to change our methodology. Secondly, in the methodology, we assume that we project for the whole year and divide by 4 to get quarterly estimate. Now, when the quarterly estimates are very widely varying, then you cannot make that assumption. So in other words, the GDP calculations are incorrect. The unorganized sector's accounting in the data is incorrect, and therefore the GDP itself is incorrect, and therefore on the basis of the incorrect GDP, we are now doing that. And the worst thing is that the unorganized sector, you can see the demand for the rural employment guarantee scheme has been very high. What does that indicate? That indicates that the unorganized sector has not come back full. And if the unorganized sector, which employs 94% of the people, if that's not coming back full, then demand will remain short. And if demand remains short, and which is what the Diwali, recent survey suggests, that the businesses are saying we are back to only 70% of 2019. If we are back to 70% of 2019, that means we are 30% still down.
Let me take that precise point to Nilesh Shah. 70%, those are also data points that most businesses are saying we are 70% of where we were in 2019. We are seeing jobs not picking up to the extent that we would hope. There are some signs, in fact, of what some are calling jobless growth at the moment. Should that be a concern? The government in the last week has been drumming up this feeling. Look at the data points when it comes to manufacturing. Look at the data points when it comes to GST collections. The economy is back on track. Is it really back on track or slowly, gradually limping back to normalcy?
So it is glass half full versus half empty. Is there a concern on MSME? Answer is undoubtedly yes. But if you look at jobs and employment, now the September unemployment as per CMIE was 6.86%. It went up a little to 7.5% in October. Hopefully post Diwali it will be below 7. But there is a wide dispersion within the unemployment within the states. States where I belong, Rajdeep, Maharashtra, it is only 4.3%. Gujarat is 2.4%. But where are we losing? Jharkhand 18%, Rajasthan 30%, Jammu and Kashmir 22%, Bihar 14%, Delhi 11%. Now, if all state becomes like my state of Maharashtra and Gujarat, then certainly unemployment will not be an issue.
No, but there are, that precisely, there are widening regional disparities, widening income inequalities. Does that concern you or not?
Rajdeep, for 75 years, we have focused on distributing pie equally. In essence, we have made everyone poor. Now we are making an attempt to grow the pie so that it can be distributed equally over a period of time. When businesses say that we are down 70% compared to 2019, shouldn't GST collection be down that much? But our GST collection is second highest in the history since its introduction. So there is a contradiction between what people are making.
Yes.
If you go to Mumbai market, and Rajdeep, I'm only talking from Mumbai market, the car waiting period is more than 2.5 months. We spoke to certain retailers. They have said that we have sold goods 2 years before, not at a discount, but at full price. And most of the shops are actually empty because there is tremendous purchasing. The crowds were swelling in the market, and the businessmen with we spoke, they are all saying that this Diwali has been one of the best Diwali they have ever seen.
That's interesting. You're actually pointing out to the paradoxes in a way that are confronting us at the moment. Dr. Fadnavis, you want to jump in on that? Is it a glass half full, half empty situation? You can cherry pick which figures you want, pick up GST figures, and you can say we are buoyant. You can pick up figures when it comes to the state of MSMEs, and you say, look, things are not great. How do you look at it?
Actually, Rajdeep, the way I look at it is slightly different, because whatever growth rate we're talking of for this year, either it's 9% at CARE ratings, maybe government is talking of a double-digit number, it comes over a negative growth of 7.3%. So I think this whole debate about whether it's a V-shaped recovery, I think it's not really very meaningful, because after falling by 7%, growing by 9 or 10%, it brings you maybe around 1.5 to 2% over 1920, which was also a bad year because growth was just around 4%. Now, currently in the year, I think let us not get swayed over what's happening during Diwali. There has been a lot of pent-up demand. Services sector has opened up. So I think that's the reason why your PMI is good. But let's remember, the economy is driven by consumption, it's driven by investment, it's driven by government, and driven by exports. There are 4 engines. Today, what we are seeing is consumption has done well in September, October, which is because of the pent-up demand situation. Investment is lagging. You look at CMI data up to September, it shows that the new announcements for investment is probably at an all-time low in the last 10 years. So it means that people are not investing. The limited amount of investment is coming from the central government. States are still a bit careful when it comes to spending. So even the government has not gone in for any fiscal stimulus. So today, the best we can say is that on account of very good GST collections, the fiscal deficit will not slip. But the government is at no point saying that we're going to spend more than 5.5 lakhs on capital expenditure. So to that extent, I think what's happening, I would go with what you started off, Rajdeep, by saying what we're seeing actually is a gradual recovery. We may get a number of between 9 to 10% this year. We should not get swayed by that. Even 22-23, to my mind, will probably have a number of around 7.5 to 8%, which will mean that we are getting up. And it will only be from 23-24 onwards that we could experience growth of 8%, which was comparable to what we saw in the pre-pandemic times.
Interesting, because, Siddharth Zarabi, if you choose the pre-pandemic period, then we are still nowhere near recovery. If you look at what happened in 2021, the worst year of the pandemic, when the economy had slipped into recession, then it appears that we are slowly recovering. How do you see this? I mean, is there reason to be buoyant and optimistic as Sama? Or should we be cautiously optimistic at the moment?
I think cautiously optimistic, and God forbid if there were to be a fresh wave of infections. We know our vaccination rates have gone up. It cannot be the same. One of the key things, Rajdeep, that we have to understand in this recovery, there is a clear recovery. Every single indicator shows us that recovery.
But in comparison to 2021, right? Obviously. Which was the worst period. I mean, you're coming out of a recession. I mean, we are not anywhere close still to pre-pandemic levels, are we?
Absolutely. And Madan explained it beautifully. I just want to bring in one point for your consideration here and for the guests. The recovery is more a urban recovery than a rural recovery. I'll just give you one data point. If you take the car sales data, passenger vehicle sales data for October versus September, month on month, mind you, it's a 40% increase. But if you compare for the same period on two-wheelers, you see a close to 21.7% decline. What is the headline here? The rural economy is yet to pick up and reach pre-pandemic levels. The deeper impact, and that beautiful bit of data that Nilesh gave, if I can just expand on it for 30 seconds, what is he showing? Industrialized states of this country are seeing lower unemployment and obviously therefore much better output and consumption as a consequence. But and I say this with a lot of caution, please don't get me wrong, some of the Bimaru states, frankly, are showing that the migrant labor force, which used to go to other states for employment, is still not going back. Therefore, the rate of unemployment in those states is higher. There is therefore a divide that is coming through very clearly on the urban versus rural, better off states versus lesser better off states, the haves and the have-nots.
No, that's precisely it, isn't it, Siddharth? Because when you look at the stock market, booming, people are now talking about unimaginable figures where the stock market will reach. But those what percentage of India benefits from the equity cult? Again, as you said, differences, disparities between states, disparities between sectors. Those in tourism and restaurant sector are still struggling at the moment.
Rajdeep, 10 years back when I used to be on your shows, there was clearly a stock market story which has now changed in the last 1 year. 10 million people have entered the stock market. Let's leave that aside. The point really is that the MSME, and that one of our guests spoke about, the informal economy is suffering because the pressures of formalization, of digitization, of online, of everything being in the tax net, of GST are still visible there. These were people at the margins. Their margins from their business is very small. They used to sort of cut corners and make some money. Now there are no corners left to cut. And that's a broader story beyond the pandemic.
So you believe in the long run, in a way, the formalization will eventually bring far more people into the economy and they will benefit as a result?
Hopefully, but they'll have to create jobs. That's the biggest imperative.
And therefore, Professor Arun Kumar, while there is pain by the disruption that has been caused in a way by GST earlier, demonetization, then COVID, to the small micro enterprises and those who are dependent on that in the informal sector, the government's argument is that some of the reforms that we've undertaken will take time to formalize the economy, and once the economy is formalized, it will benefit far more people tomorrow than perhaps it did yesterday.
I think it's a false argument to say that by formalization we'll create more jobs, because you see the organized sector is highly capital intensive, creates very few jobs, and therefore there's a jobless growth. Now this formalization of the informal sector doesn't work because in a sense we have 6 crore micro units, okay? And the number of entities which pay GST is only about 1.3 crores at the maximum. Those registered under GST is only 1.5 crores. So, the GST collection only represents the organized sector, doesn't represent the unorganized sector. So when we say GST collections have risen by 30%, we're only saying the organized sector is paying 30% more tax, but that doesn't mean that the unorganized sector is there. Secondly, if you try to digitize more and you try to put more into the organized sector, the unorganized sector will only expand because there'll be no employment generation, and people from agriculture who want to leave agriculture, they will only go into the unorganized sector at very, marginal kind of jobs. They'll do weightlifting, they'll do rickshaw pulling, they'll do other things, but that will not change the nature of the economy where the 94% are in the unorganized sector. So I think the government has it, wrong in terms of its policies that, it's trying to formalize the informal. This business of formalizing the informal is only going to marginalize the informal sector. And we need to split up the MSME into micro separately and small and medium separately. Micro units employ average of 1.7%, which is nothing to do with small and medium. And when we lump MSME together, then all the benefits are taken by small and medium and not the micro units. And as long as the micro units keep declining, the informal sector will keep expanding.
Let Nilesh Shah respond to that, because the government sees its major achievement as this attempt to formalize what was seen earlier as the informal sector. Greater digitization, UPI transactions have reached a record high, and the government says this is a sign that we are changing the way the Indian economy functions. You've got Professor Arun Kumar saying it's a terrible way to look at it. It will lead to jobless growth.
So for last 75 years, we have pursued the policy of promoting microfinance and micro enterprises. Where has that reached us? We have seen Korea overpassing us. We have seen China overpassing us. We have seen Bangladesh overpassing us. Rajdeep, let me tell you the story of Morbi. It was a town which was devastated when Machu Nadi dam busted. Everything was ruined. And then people picked up the pieces and they became tile center of India. They were making tiles using coal, which was highly polluting. They were all informal enterprises. Quality was not really good. One day, Gujarat High Court gave an order that you have to burn natural gas. Now, when you were buying coal in the black market and selling tiles in the black market, you were informal economy. Natural gas was no longer available in black market. by checking the calorific value of natural gas, one can figure out how many tiles you have produced. There was a formalization on the tile industry. And whereas Morbi reached today, if you travel from Ahmedabad towards Morbi, you will see large tiles factory. They are all formal economy. There was a fear that China will dump tiles into India. Now we are competing with China in Middle East market. Exports from Morbi itself is 7,000 crore. On the back of tiles, Morbi started making clocks. The world's largest clock manufacturer, Ajanta Clock, is from Morbi. We were importing calculators. Now calculators are made in Morbi. And Morbi has not become Singapore, but Morbi is certainly far better than any other place in the country. This is the benefit of formalization. You have created a globally competitive industry.
I must allow Professor Kumar to respond. A real clear example has been given by Nilesh Shah of possible benefits from formalizing the economy.
So, take a look at any urban area. There are a large number of rickshaw pullers, people who push carts, people who lift weight on their head, etc. And the average employment in the informal sector is 1.7, what's called the micro sector. Now, they are operating with very low technology. How do you formalize them? If you formalize them and give them machines, then there'll be even less of employment generation. So while it might have worked in the case of Morbi or in case of one or two other things, when we're talking about the economy as a whole, and especially the services sector, which is very large, there are a large number of dhabas, etc. There are a large number of, very, very tiny units that are operating. As I said, 1.7 is the average employment in the micro sector. So micro sector is not even like the small and medium sector. So therefore, one example doesn't mean that the economy itself can be formalized in the way Morbi may have happened. And there may be special circumstances for Morbi, but those special circumstances don't operate elsewhere.
I keep looking at data points, Dr. Sabnavis. Rural India facing a sizable fall of more than 6 million workers in both the formal and informal sectors in October, a point that Siddharth raised. The biggest unemployment hit has been to daily wage workers. Are we seeing post-COVID, or even as we reach the last phase, hopefully, of COVID, growing income inequalities? That remains a big concern, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. I think what we have seen during COVID and what we're seeing during this Diwali, which has led to this optimism about stock market going up and people spending a lot, I think there's a big difference between the categories of people who are spending. It's more a case of people in the higher income groups who have this pent-up demand, who are able to buy real estate, or you buy your motor vehicles, buy your consumer goods. When you go to a rural economy, I think the picture is quite different. And we have seen that the rural economy has been affected by COVID, the second wave of COVID. It has affected the spending part. Almost all the households have been spending more on healthcare. The cost of healthcare has gone up. And to top it all, Rajiv, the important part is that inflation is very high. Notwithstanding these numbers of 4.3% which are put out, the fact remains when you pay 50 rupees a kilo for tomatoes, 50 rupees for onions, and you pay edible oils costing over 200 rupees a litre, I think your absolute spending power has also come down. To top it all, jobs have not been created. This is a problem we had even before COVID set in. So the case of job, and so today when we're talking of formalization, if I just like to add my bit up here, I think formalization is very good from the point of view of having an organized country, an organized economy where the government is able to track people and get better revenues. But I think as what Dr. Arun Kumar, what even Siddharth has put forward, it does not really create jobs. Merely by a dhaba cannot be converted to a five-star hotel or even to a low-grade restaurant. That will mean a formalization taking place. But that kind of thing really doesn't happen. And as you formalize, it's also true that you require less labor. Post-COVID, we have seen most organizations are trying to move more towards technology. And we have seen that even the organized sector is less willing to hire people, at least at the lower levels. So I think there is a concern of growing inequality. And that's something which will finally affect overall demand.
In a way, are we seeing two models, Siddharth Zarabi, at work? The Modinomics model, which is also, as R. Jagannathan in an interesting piece wrote, is socionomics, that you have these large welfare programs that are directed at the poor, targeting the direct beneficiaries through digitization, ensuring they get through Jan Dhan, through Krishi Samman Yojana, get benefits that otherwise they believe they would not get, direct cash benefits. On the other hand, in a structural term, you've got a growing distinction between those at the creamy layer and a large number of people who are hurting at the moment.
Absolutely. Rajdeep,
are there two models out there now?
Not exactly two models, but one pattern is very clearly visible. Let's just take agriculture, for example. If we see the numbers of the first quarter, 11.3% growth versus 5.7% in the same comparable period last year. What is it telling us? And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the agriculture economy is doing extremely well and will be a mainstay, weather notwithstanding, for the next few quarters. One of the more interesting, anecdotal evidences that we are seeing is that the agriculture economy is performing better. Many people who have returned from big urban centers where they were living in chaotic conditions and working very long hours are now preferring to work for a lesser increment, lesser wage in their home
even
district.
though the demand for Manrega jobs is rising, which is not being, which suggests that there are a lot of people, daily wage laborers also in rural India out there.
Absolutely. Remember, there used to be a shortage of labor in certain key centers when they would migrate. And we know that the government has clearly said that we will provide more funds if needed for Narega. So there is a story that is playing out at two levels. The big definitely are getting better. They are leveraging technology, capital, and their business processes to consolidate. We have seen consolidation across sectors.
Is that cronyism or is that consolidation?
I think it's a consolidation. Frankly, there is no scope left for cronyism because the manner in which the government is interfacing with many sectors is changing. Take the aviation sector. With Air India out, Rajdeep, what does the Ministry of Civil Aviation frankly do? That's a separate debate.
So you believe it's politics when the opposition says that a very few handful select industrialists have benefited in the last few years, a large number of people and large sectors have, some sectors have benefited, others have lost out?
Well, there is definitely politics.
Infrastructure sectors benefiting, for example?
There is definitely politics because it's about saying what you need to say as an opposition party, but the facts are very different. I think we can also take a look at the amount of judicial interventions that have been required as a clear indicator that you could say that in the last 6-7 years, as far as business decision making and government interface is concerned, that's far more transparent and clear, Rajdeep.
Let me therefore ask each and every one of you as we conclude for a solution. Where would you, if you really want to see the economy now take the next leap forward? Professor Arun Kumar, you start and then we'll go right around the table.
So, demand has been short, inflation has been high, and a large number of people have lost employment and income. So we need to pump in demand into those people who have lost employment and income, especially in the unorganized sector. We need to separate the micro sector from the MSME.
So what would you do? What would you do? You would have a minimum income guarantee scheme?
Yes. At the moment, yes, we need a minimum income guarantee scheme. But over a period of time, we have to increase public investment. That money would be better spent as public investment. But at this moment, there's a crisis, so we need to transfer more money into the hands of the poor. But public investment must rise because that will then crowd in private investment as well, which will then lead to greater demand and to greater, economic revival. Okay. So that would be my, idea of how to do it. Also, increase employment generation and rural employment guarantee scheme by increasing wages there, and also have an urban employment guarantee scheme for urban areas where also there's a large amount of unemployment.
Interesting. Urban employment guarantee scheme. Nilesh Shah, your prescription?
So, as I speak, you will hear the beautiful sound of azan in the background. So, God is also with me. I think there are only two things required. One, liberate and respect Indian entrepreneurs. We are like a modern day Abhimanyu who is fighting Kauravas as well as Pandavas together. We are fighting markets and we are fighting, compliance burdens and process and so on and so forth. Respect businesses and liberate entrepreneurs, they'll go and conquer the world. Second,
how? You say liberate businesses. What would you do? What would you do that you believe the government hasn't done so far to liberate the entrepreneurial energies, the animal spirits of the economy, if I may call it that?
They've done a lot, but what is missing is bringing rule of law. We pass a law that if your check bounces, you will go to jail. But then judicial system is clogged with 40 lakh cases where check bouncing has not resulted into anything. Entrepreneurs will invest when they get comfort that there is a rule of law. We have to also ease the burden of compliance. There are multiple rules, regulations. For opening a single hotel, you require some 50 plus approvals. Can we streamline that? Can we reduce it? When we engage with small and medium enterprises, the real challenge is compliance with rules and regulations and the processes. If we can ease that, if we can make that online, if we can make that simple, I'm sure India will achieve double-digit growth.
Interesting point, particularly on the rule of law. We will need that judicial reform if we are to take the next leap forward. Dr. Sabnabis?
In my opinion, I think I look at the government as an enabler of growth. And I think here, in terms of the policy framework, I think it's scored very well over the last couple of years. So I think we have the entire policy framework in place. But the important thing which needs to happen now is for private investment to pick up. And private investment doesn't pick up just like that. I think otherwise, I think the whole world would be very prosperous. Everywhere, I think countries would be growing. Today, we have surplus capacity in most of the industries. So unless consumption picks up, and that's when your capacity utilization rate improves, that's when fresh investment will come in. So I think the clue is to have faster investment, because when we have more investment, it automatically creates more jobs, and as it creates more jobs, it creates more consumption, and it's a virtuous cycle which is set up. So I think we just need to be patient. I think anybody who says that we can achieve very rapid growth in the next year would probably be overstating it, because things do happen very gradually, especially after the downturn which we witnessed during the pandemic.
Final word, Siddharth Sarabi.
More investments in the rural economy, and a step has been taken to reduce the energy price with petrol and diesel. More of that should happen. I'm going to say that crude oil prices may go up globally, but India will need to have a cushion. And finally, less than 90 days left for the next budget. I think there's a lot of focus that will be required on those who have not yet managed to recover from the pandemic.
Right. So in a way, we are at a very critical moment. We've perhaps seen the worst of the impact of the pandemic, but we can't really say that we are completely out of the woods. And that will require reform at various levels. It will require cushions for those who've suffered the most. We need inclusive growth in the truest sense, perhaps. And this is a moment, perhaps, where we need to reflect upon that and take ourselves towards the next step in the economic ladder. It's been Diwali. It's been a Diwali week where some people have had reason to celebrate. Certainly those who've been investing, I'm told, in the stock market, and those who perhaps live as daily wage laborers who continue to struggle. We therefore need to think of all sectors and all sections of society as we move ahead. Thank you all very much for sharing your wisdom and insights. Always good to have clear minds on the Economy Roundtable. That's it on this special show. Thanks very much for joining us. Once again, Happy Diwali, Shubh Deepavali, and Saal Mubarak to all of you. Bye for now.